There are moments in storytelling that reach beyond ink and parchment. Moments so raw, so devastatingly human. They pierce the heart of even their own creator. For J.R.R. Tolkien, such a moment came not amid the clashing of swords or the coronation of kings, but in a hushed, vulnerable scene, a quiet heartbreak beneath the shadowed skies of Mordor. It was here, as Gollum crept back to find Frodo asleep with his head cradled in Sam's lap, that Tolkien felt his pen tremble. In that stillness, Gollum, once a monster, a whisperer of curses, looked upon them not with malice, but with mourning. He reached out, not to steal, but to touch, gently, as if recalling what love once felt like. And in that fleeting moment, he was not Gollum. He was Smeagol, the hobbit he might have remained. There was no deceit, no plan, only a heartbeat of purity poised on the edge of salvation. But then came the word, rough, distrustful. Sam's voice cracked the silence like thunder on thin glass. Suspicion twisted the moment, and what could have been redemption shattered into inevitability. Tolkien later confessed, not in print, but in voice, that he wept as he wrote this scene, because in it, he captured a truth as old as time, that sometimes the very ones trying to protect us can, in their fear, undo what love almost mended. That redemption is delicate and rarely loud, and that even monsters, in their final flicker of humanity, deserve to be seen. This wasn't just a scene. It was the soul of the Lord of the Rings laid bare, and its quiet tragedy, forgotten by film, remains one of the most powerful moments in all of Middle-earth. Samwise Gamgee, the gardener of the Shire, the heart of the Fellowship, the unshakable shadow at Frodo's side, is often hailed as the story's truest hero. And yet, within the nobility of his unwavering loyalty lies a flaw as tragic as it is human. Tolkien, ever the master of subtlety, once revealed in his letters that Sam was cocksure and a little conceited, a description that might surprise those who know him only as the humble companion. But Tolkien wasn't condemning Sam. He was peeling back the layers. Sam's pride wasn't for fame or fortune. It was a possessive kind, born of deep love, the sort of love that claims, that protects fiercely, even to the point of blindness. His devotion to Frodo became his identity, and anything that threatened that bond, including Gollum, ignited a quiet storm of jealousy and mistrust. As Frodo evolved, his empathy deepening, his sorrow refining his sense of mercy, Sam remained tethered to a simpler world of good and evil. He couldn't yet grasp Frodo's compassion for Gollum, couldn't see the wisdom in pitying the fallen. To Sam, Gollum was danger incarnate, not a soul in torment. And so, with every sidelong glare, every cruel name like Slinker or Stinker, Sam unknowingly drove a wedge not only between himself and Gollum, but between himself and the Frodo who was changing before his very eyes. It wasn't malice. It was love, fierce, proud, and tragically flawed. And in this, Tolkien reminds us that even the kindest hearts can falter. That devotion, when shadowed by fear, can smother instead of save. And that sometimes the ones who walk beside us cannot see the path we're on, not because they do not care, but because they care too much. Frodo Baggins was never meant to be a warrior, yet his journey would demand more of him than any sword or shield could bear. With each step toward Mordor, the ring gnawed at his soul, whispering promises, sowing doubt, weighing him down with a burden no one else could see. But it was through this pain that Frodo began to change, not into something lesser, but into something far more profound. As the ring sought to hollow him, it ironically deepened his understanding of suffering. He began to see Gollum not merely as a creature twisted by darkness, but as a mirror, a living warning of what he himself might become. And in this reflection, Frodo found something rare, compassion born of torment. It was not pity laced with superiority, but empathy forged in pain. Frodo began to see the unlovable as still worthy of love, the broken as still capable of redemption. In the growing silence of his own unraveling, Frodo's heart expanded. He reached for Gollum not to fix him, but to understand him, to walk beside someone who had once walked his path and fallen. And that understanding, that sorrowful grace, set Frodo apart even from his most loyal companions. While others saw danger, he saw a soul in peril. While others feared betrayal, he feared what would be lost if no one dared to believe in Gollum's flicker of goodness. This evolution, this education in mercy, is the quiet heartbeat of Frodo's arc. It is what makes him not only a ring-bearer, but a beacon in a land long consumed by shadow. Through suffering, Frodo learned the hardest truth, that even in the darkest hearts, there may still be something worth saving, and that is the noblest burden of all. It happened in the dead silence before doom, a moment so fragile it could have changed everything. Gollum, the twisted wretch hunched by shadows, returned from the dark to find Frodo asleep with his head resting gently in Sam's lap. No eyes watched him, no deceit cloaked his face, and in that stillness, something extraordinary stirred. The gleam of the ring flickered faintly in his mind, but another light, fainter, older, struggled to burn brighter. He looked at them, these two hobbits who had dragged him from darkness with pity and chains, and for a breath in time, Gollum vanished. Smeagol, the forgotten hobbit, the broken soul suffocating beneath centuries of rot, emerged. His hand trembled as it reached toward Frodo's knee, not with malice, not with hunger, but with aching tenderness. A gesture so small, yet brimming with something that hadn't touched him in years. Affection, perhaps even love. It was not a ploy. It was not a trick. It was real. In that instant, he was close, so close, to stepping away from the edge, to choosing Frodo over the ring. Redemption hovered in the air like a breath waiting to be drawn. But then, Sam spoke. Harsh, suspicious, protecting, yes, but blind to what had just been born in the darkness. The moment shattered. The old hatred returned. The glimmer in Gollum's eyes vanished, replaced by the cold glint of betrayal. That brief window, that miracle of mercy, closed forever. And with it, the last chance to save Smeagol. It was a tragedy so delicate, so precise, that Tolkien himself admitted it brought him to tears as he penned it. Because this was the heartbreak of Middle-earth, not a war lost, but a soul that might have been saved. If only someone had seen it. The forbidden pool, a place where water mirrored moonlight and betrayal rippled just beneath the surface. It was here, cloaked in darkness and silence, that Frodo made a choice born of mercy. Gollum, unaware and vulnerable, slipped into the cool water, his guard down, his heart, for once, unburdened. Frodo's voice called to him, gentle yet edged with urgency, luring him back from the brink of capture. And when Gollum obeyed, stepping forward like a child responding to trust, it happened. He was seized. Frodo's intent had been to spare his life, but Gollum didn't see mercy in the hands that grabbed him. He saw trickery. He saw betrayal. And in his eyes, Frodo's kindness curdled into cruelty. In the film, this moment becomes the fatal wound, the break that defines Gollum's fall. From here, his path turns, and the love he might have held for Frodo is drowned beneath waves of vengeance. But in the book, the story doesn't sever so cleanly. Gollum, for all his bitterness, understands. Not immediately, but gradually, he comes to see that Frodo acted not out of malice, but necessity, and even after the betrayal, Gollum acknowledges the truth. Frodo saved him. The trust is cracked, yes, but not shattered. Not yet. There remains a faint tether, a thread of loyalty, stretched but unbroken. And in that fragile connection lies Tolkien's genius. Because in real life, betrayal doesn't always shatter trust in one swift blow. Sometimes it lingers. Sometimes love and hate share space in the same heart. Gollum is caught in that in-between, hurt but not lost. And for a time, we believe redemption might still win. But as the journey presses on, the cracks deepen, and the wound, once merely a fracture, begins to bleed. Not all mercy is understood. Not all kindness is believed. In the suffocating shadows of Mordor, a war raged, not on the battlefield, but within the mind of a creature torn in two. Gollum was not just a name. It was the echo of corruption, the hiss of obsession. But buried deep within him, beneath layers of madness and malice, Smeagol still whispered. And those whispers became louder as he traveled beside Frodo, who treated him not with cruelty, but with something far more dangerous. Understanding. The rings pull not at him, yes, but so too did Frodo's kindness, rekindling a nearly extinguished spark. Yet Gollum could not choose. Not yet. He temporized. As Tolkien described it, he delayed, hovering at the edge of redemption without ever taking the leap. It was in this hesitation that his tragedy festered. In the marshes, in the black slag pits of his soul, he debated aloud. We wants it, but not that way. His hands crept toward Frodo in sleep, only to recoil. Each time, Smeagol tried to resist. Each time, Gollum clawed closer. That inner war between the twisted addict and the shattered child played out with no audience, save one, Sam. And Sam, unable to hear the hope woven into Gollum's muttering, interrupted. The moment passed, the decision deferred. But delay is its own doom. For every time Gollum refused to choose the good, the darkness crept further in. Every pause, every hesitation, weakened him. Frodo's mercy had opened a door, but Gollum lingered on the threshold too long. And in Middle-earth, even the smallest delay can cost everything. This is the tragedy of Gollum's indecision. Not a grand fall, but a slow surrender. Not evil chosen, but good unclaimed. And it is this haunting lesson Tolkien threads through the silence, that the time to choose redemption is always now, before it slips away. At its heart, The Lord of the Rings is not merely a tale of heroes versus villains, of light against darkness. It is a meditation on the fragile, often flawed nature of goodness itself. Nowhere is this more painfully evident than in the moment Gollum comes within a breath of redemption, only to be undone by a well-meaning act of love. Samwise Gamgee, that beloved pillar of loyalty, was acting out of devotion, his heart brimming with the desire to protect Frodo from danger. But in his simplicity, in his inability to see the nuance behind Gollum's fractured soul, he became the unintentional architect of Gollum's fall. And that is the quiet tragedy Tolkien dared to write. This wasn't a grand betrayal. It was a small word, a rough tone, a look of mistrust, and it was enough to break the spell of grace. Gollum's flicker of humanity was not extinguished by cruelty, but by a kindness laced with fear. And therein lies Tolkien's genius. The recognition that good intentions are not immune from doing harm. That sometimes the very act of protecting someone can blind us to what they truly need. Frodo's compassion had opened the door to healing, but Sam's fear slammed it shut, too quickly, too harshly. We do not blame Sam. How could we? He loved Frodo deeply. But that's the point. Even our most virtuous actions can be shadowed by emotion, pride, or pain. And in this, Tolkien holds up a mirror, not to his characters, but to us. He whispers that the path to mercy is narrow, easily missed, and that the line between good and ill is drawn not only by action, but by perception. Sometimes the noblest hearts do the deepest harm, not because they failed to care. Through Gollum's near redemption, Frodo's compassion, and Sam's flawed devotion, we witness a tale where goodness is not simple, and love is not always enough. Each character walks a razor's edge between mercy and fear, hope and despair. These moments, quiet, human, heartbreaking, remind us that the deepest struggles are not against armies, but within ourselves. In Middle-earth, as in life, the greatest tragedies are not always the ones that shout, but the ones that whisper and are missed.